motif, the archetype, the understanding of the word garments as it's used, and many polysemous levels. Now, I was, using the verse from Psalm 104, where Yahweh, he clothes himself in light as with a garment. And this is, he is coming into manifestation, creating a worlds, and he clothes himself. He, as I explained, he continues to wrap himself in Sefiroth upon Sefiroth upon Sefiroth, all right? But there's another way when you get down, as you come down the Sephirothic ladder, so to speak, you come down in these worlds into greater and greater, and finally, boom, you end up here in physicality. You got your boots on the ground. That's so the feet is a code would always represent Sefiroth of Malchut, of being down here totally in physicality, all right? But, there's garments. So each Sefiroth is referred to as a garment. But there's an important thing we have to understand, because this will help unlock a lot of the apocryphal, especially a lot of the apocalypses, these stories that are mysteries, that have mysteries hidden in them. So when it's talking about Esau, and the garments. Why did Jacob put on his garments? Why did Nimrod steal, or why did Cush steal these garments from Noah? What was going on there? Why did he give them to Nimrod? And then when Nimrod put on these garments, what are they talking about? All right. So on their deeper spiritual level, they're not talking about the physical garments. All right. And I said, ultimately, when Adam and Eve, in the very first usage of this concept of garment is when Yahweh clothed Adam and Eve in garments. He covered them, and this is the point. And he covered them in what it really comes out to is in a level of DNA, physicality, vibration, density, that our DNA is kind of coded to come into this world as a certain garment, a certain skin. All right, we don't come in here as monkeys. We don't come in here as we're not. See, this is the point. I have a series that you should listen to. I always suggest people get tons of backdrop on this listening to my YouTube channel. But my series on Keys to the Kingdom on beasts, unwrapping, the levels of living souls that Yahweh made on the 5th and the 6th day, and what they were clothed in. All right, their clothing, is identified as beasts. So they're clothed as fish, or as birds, or as behemoth, cattle, or as Adamites. These are code words. Again, this is what the sages are telling us. They're encrypting deep esoteric information, and that the garments, the final physicalities of these entities into manifestation, because it's always these are the garments. But let me make a point here, because in this Sefiroth, which you'll learn, and you'll learn deeply how our Torah is encrypted on so many levels, because as I said, you have 10 Sefiroth. You have, and in the Sefiroth, there's 3 mothers. Then it says that there's 7 doubles. I'm like, how does that work? Even mathematically, or what's being said there? There is a very interesting and specific way in which the sages have encrypted, encoded, kind of which side of the aisle your soul is from, so to speak. Souls come from places. They have originating root systems up in the Sefiroth, all right, or even in lower realms. I mean, this is part of the story when you get to understand how the Sefiroth, what it's talking about, where these, so like, where does Azazel come from? Where does Hasatan, and everybody's coming from somewhere in this great vast worlds out there, into interfacing somehow with people down here on the ground. All right, so there's all these code words that are used, and when it says 7 doubles, Satan has a kingdom, all right, and it's populated with angels, with demons, all right, the fallen angels, all right. There are many that once had their root. He once had a root system. He was once way high up in the Sefiroth chain of command in the whole worlds and realms. He could go into the throne. I mean, he had access at one point. He is now shut out of there, all right? So as you begin to understand how all of this relates to each other, and you can move with the prophets where they are. I say you got to understand geographically where they are in the whole, all of the heavens, even the four. All right, to make my point. So they have ways in which they code into information whether a soul is coming from a left side or from a demonic realm. There's two realms. There's a side of good and evil. There's sons of light and there's sons of darkness. So how is the text, there's so many different ways in which the text tells us, gives us information. If you had the keys, you would understand, all right, the root systems. But this is why it says, this is the whole point now, getting into the garments that were stolen by Nimrod, all right? And he made himself a god, basically, to be worshipped. The first really antichrist ruler after the flood. Again, a Nephilim, a hybrid, all right? Which means he took some of his garments. He took Noah's garments. I'm not going to unpack the whole thing right now, but what I want is to just clue people in, show you the hints. So as you begin to read, you'll see, oh my God, that's a hint of something deeper, all right? Now, the left side is always coded demonic with the demonic left side, fallen angels, all right? So this is what Joshua said, choose you this day. You got to choose. Actually, we are choosing moment by moment, day by day, which our soul, because we're very complicated systems, what program are you clicking on? Which side of the 7 elementals, the left side or the right side, are you clicking on? Are you operating from? All right. And what program is your heart operating from? The left side, the side of unholiness, unrighteousness, the demonic kingdom, or are you in the side of holiness and righteousness and obeying Torah? They're very clearly delineated. So the left side it starts with Cain. Cain is the first hybrid child of mixing up quote unquote garments in forbidden mixtures. That's why you don't wear linen and wool. All right, that's another way they're cluing you, and they're telling you, all right, you've got to stay pure. There are garments for the righteous. So let me put it this way. Nimrod and his garments were demonic coverings, all right, versus they're called filthy rags, all right? And ours are righteous clothing. We put on righteous garments. We're going to be wearing pure linen, all right? These are ways that the garments are going to come from one side or the other, the coverings, all right? So Esau, Cain, Esau, Edom, Idumeah, Mount Seir, Taman, Amalek, the Canaanites, in the Dead Sea Scrolls, the Kittim, Babylon, Egypt. These are all code words sort of that are telling us that there are garments being manifested in the physical, in the sense these people, their actions, their deeds, their soul roots, they themselves, a lot of times, all right, are, manifested fallen angels. Because like I did tell you in that original quote, something that was very deep. Anytime an angel, from Simeon Bar Yochai said that anytime an angel comes into the world, they have to don earthly garments. All right, that's why Yeshua had to don. He had to put on our nephesh soul, the nephesh garment of Adam. I mean, it's just incredibly deep. But so I just want to clue you in. So these are ways in which, like Edom, this is a really important word we're going to have to unpack and like dialogue, because, this is part of the problem in the reunification of the whole house of Israel. Right now, the house of Judah considers Ephraim, considers Christianity, which by and large is the the garment, the physical physical manifestation of the returning lost sheep. All right. And they don't want nothing to do with it because they consider us coming from the left side, Edomites. All right. And a lot of it has to do with the way we have treated Israel. We have not historically, most people grow up in the last 30, 40 years when Israel and the Jews and a lot of Western Christianity have had good relationships with each other. We support Israel today ever since it became a nation. That has not always been our history. Oh my gosh. Go study the pogroms, the history of the poor Jews in Europe. It was not at all a good relationship, all right? They do not trust us. They historically have had no reason. We have had a lot of the left side. We have emanated a lot of the behavior and the actual, been infiltrated literally to a large extent, Christianity has by the left side. Now that's another whole story that's beyond the discourse of what I'm talking about, but just to kind of clue you in. But at the same time, this is how interesting, this is again, the thing that trumps everything in this, for our intents and purposes, is the Sefiroth of Hesed right now, in the sense of, he says his loving kindness and her tender mercies trump everything. All right. And a lot of, there have been righteous, and this is the point. So it doesn't matter what your bloodline is or where you, everyone can choose you this day. Some of the most, well, Job, let me tell you, Job was one of the most righteous, is considered the most righteous Gentile who ever lived. All right. And when you understand this whole garment thing, as you come down into physicality, as you get into really the things that are made separatically, the fifth and the sixth day, in actuality, Job was he be called an Edomite. He was of the lineage of Esau. He was the grandson. Okay, so, but at the same time, he was double kin to Jacob. So he was also, he was of the lineage of Esau, but he married into the line of Jacob. He was the grandson of Jacob's brother Esau, because they were brothers. So it would be, all right. But he was a son-in-law to Jacob because he married Dinah, who as his second wife. And Dinah was the daughter of Jacob. All right. He did have a daughter. There were 12. This is something he's never really talked about. And there's so much deep stuff here. 12 sons, 12 tribes, but there was a daughter, and she has a whole story about her. All right. But it was, Job was called the king of Edom in his time, because at that time he was a righteous. It didn't have, so in other words, you can emanate righteous Sefiroth or righteous living, righteous behavior, righteous garments, doesn't matter what side predominantly per se your people come from. I mean, this is just an important nuance to understand, but I'll tell you, it goes into say like Naamah, who was the wife of Noah's second wife that he took on the ark. She was again one of the most righteous Gentile women. She was so righteous, she repented of her, she left her bloodline people, the Canaanites, so to speak, came to study in the tents of Noah, Shem, and Noah, and she ended up marrying Noah as his second wife, and she ended up being the mother of Ham. I mean, there's a lot of stories here. So on one level, we all are a big mixed bag, and we all need to repent, but some people have much deeper roots, so to speak. This is part of the war. So in clothed of garments, another way this is told is that when in the garden, Adam and Eve, and they sin, and then the sentence is the judgment. So you look at the curses. These are the judgments that come down upon them for their actions or disobedience. But one of it says that, to the woman, your seed and the seed of the serpent. All right, these things that. Okay, and again, code words here. Nakash, that's a different DNA makeup. As I'm teaching in the series on beasts, that's a different garment, a different manifestation of this thing. And we're not supposed to mix seed. We're not supposed to mix this stuff. You don't mix. Oh, there were curses said that his seed, he will bruise your head. you will bruise his head and he will bruise your heel, or the other way. In other words, that's an idiomatic way of saying, look, at sometimes the seed of Cain, the left side, the demonic side will be up and ruling, and sometimes the righteous seed, the righteous line will be up and ruling. It's a battle, and some, we're constantly warring against each other, and it has to do with the garments again. In this sense, is which garment, which manifestation, which clothing? Is it demonic clothing? Is it filthy rags? And Yeshua said you'll know them by their fruit. All right, so you can know, a person who's wearing filthy rags biblically is an indication, well, he's definitely coming from the dark side. All right, his versus someone clothed in linen. All right, these are kind of ways in which they have coded and tried to clue in the initiated, the wise person who understands and is willing to go in and study and learn these deep mysteries. All right, so this is why it's important with the story of Nimrod. It says that in a lot of this information is the book of Jasher. All right, and we're told in the text to, if you want the history of the, you understand, go read the book of Jasher. It's got a lot of information. And I do believe, personally, I don't think there's anything wrong with the current book of Jasher that's circulating today. I think it's the one that comes out of the publishing house of Perry, because I do believe it is a midrash. It's a pretty, my opinion, authentic, accurate. I mean, I'm sure there's some errors in it, but it gives you a lot more information to work with, especially about Nimrod in the early, right after the flood, all right? Because we don't get a lot of information in our text. So anyways, it says here, the knife of Nimrod is amplified in the book of Jasher, and he became a mighty man, Gabor, before the Lord, a mighty warrior. He put on, in other words, in this time, he was pretty powerfully demonically charged. I mean, seriously, he was pulling garments upon himself, clothing himself with some pretty heavy duty demonic energies, because again, right side, left side, demonic energies from the right side, from the left side, and demonic and righteous energies from the right side. All right. It says that he stole the garments of skins which Yahweh had made for Adam and Eve, and when they went out of the garden. Now, so I said this language, what I'm telling you, is highly coded, and we're gonna get it back out into the light and flushed out so we can understand. There's a great book that I like to read. I used to read that really opened my eyes up to all this. The Apocalypse of Abraham. It's a you can just look it up and study about it, read it. All right. But it talks, and there's so much good information here in the way they use the code words and things. See, and this is where in the understanding the tree of life, the contrast between there is an uncreated light. Let me put it this way. Sephirothically, the light that Yahweh wraps himself in is not the light of the sun. All right. The Sephiroth that is inside the next Sephiroth down, that is always greater. All right. So there is an uncreated light, which is the tree of life. All right. The middle pillar, Yod-Heh, Vav-Heh, when he clothed himself in life. All right. In light, uncreated. It was from, this is the, we're saying it was from another source, another higher Sephiroth. All right. But the light of they say a lot of times like the sun we see, which in a lot of it is Chronos, I believe. Is it? It is the sun. In other words, represents the garments that were put on Adam when he sinned. It's a lower light, and it's very tied in to the rebellion and to the left side right now. That's why in the whole, when the whole thing is recreated in the new heaven and new earth, there's not going to be a sun and a moon. All right. These powers, these demonic energies, because Satan is still able to inhabit part of the heavens. So his demonic are going to be gone. All right. We don't have to deal with them. Okay. So in the Apocalypse of Adam, it talks about a garment that was in heaven There are heavenly, and it talks about our heavenly garments are stored up for us. This is what it says, how we groan and travail together now to be clothed with our heavenly garments. We have waiting for us the full Sephirothic tree of life. We will be elevated to that level. Really, in a lot of ways, it is a vibration in a sense that we will be able to live and move and have our being in the upper worlds without any veil overs or any like right now we're caught in a net. We can't get out of this. Mentally, we can ascend through holiness. This is why the mitzvahs are so important. There's different ways. We absolutely can escape the net that's over us now. And we will be fully free, and we will be completely clothed with our garments from on high at the total restoration of all things, or in the millennium. All right. They're garments of glory. They're garments of light. All right. Now, this is the story too, and it talks about how when Enoch was taken out of his earthly garments, all right, the carnal corruptible, his carnal DNA, sort of his neph was changed. He was given, he was infused with higher functioning, almost like, it's a kind of computer programs where he could function and stay and remain in the heavenly realms. He was able to leave off his earthly garment. All right. And he was able to ascend in with so this is and remain in all the way. He was brought all the way up. And this is some of the thing that happens, and Paul says, this is why Paul says, I knew a man who had a vision of the in the third heaven. He says, whether in the body or out of the body, I don't know. I mean, most people, when they get into a trance-like vision, they're there mentally, whether their body's there or not. These are nuanced things that are really important, love to talk about. But this is kind of what they're saying. And this way, you can't really take your earthly body to these levels, like I said, because you'll just get burned up by the light. All right, it's just too intense there. All right. So he was anointed. So when Enoch, in his translation, so to speak, when he was taken up out of his earthly garments, the carnal, the corruptible, and he was anointed with the type of the sweet ointment. He was anointed with garments with and the sweet smelling savor. And that's another way they talk about the heavenly, the holy, the righteous, Sephirothic waves or energies that are out there in the universe. All right. In all of the worlds. He was anointed and he was put into a garment of glory and a garment of light. He was clothed at that point with his heavenly garments. Okay. I mean, y'all can do anything he wants. All right. And this is what so much of the pseudography is. Because, the angels were a little freaked that here's Enoch, this Adamic guy who's up there in a higher place. I mean, there's so much dialogue and what would be the word midrash on all this. All right. But for our intents and purposes, because he was transfigured to be like one of the angels in this ethereal state, all right, this very pure, high, ethereal, astral state, all right. Enoch was given a books and a pen to write. And if you understand the books and a pen, I mean, these are code which he had, and he was elevated to such a place and became Metatron and became really and truly the angel, over the Adamic race in the sense, and he was a witness in heaven, and he has been keeping track, and not literally, he has so many, this is where I love that when we get to the science, the ability vibrationally, through light wave and sound wave, vibrationally, everything is being recorded, everything, all right? It's going to get played back, and there's going to be no argue with the, well, I never really did that. Oh yeah, you did. Let me show you right here. Boom. And then Enoch just opens up the book to the page. He clicks the program. He says, okay, it's right here. This is where she did it. Okay. This is the way to understand. It's pretty deep scientific stuff. And I'm not elevating science, but in just is a second witness to actually how real and how brilliant in terms of, these are not little fantasy stories, they're not little narrative, like he's just little stories, as it says in Torah. You think they're just little stories. Okay, so the souls of mankind, and then again, Enoch was given the book, and after that point it says, then the souls of mankind, the whole point is when it's all right, our souls will be placed in places prepared for us for all of eternity. In other words, you're earning your spot right now. Either you're going to be in the body, in the new Adam Caveman, in the new heaven and earth, you're going to be plugged in, Sefiroth, wherever you kind of earned your spot, wherever, it's all going to be great. It's all going to be very just. Everybody's going to be happy, really. And or without, or you're going to be outside where the dogs and the sorcerers, this is the point. You're either in or you're out. But, there's a lot we can flesh out on that. Okay, so that's sort of a little bit of that story there. But in the New Testament, again, taking it into a higher, see, and this gets in a lot of this understanding, Messiah ben Joseph, Messiah ben David, even the priesthood, the Melchizedek, what's going on? These are deeply coded motifs, archetypes of the whole plan of salvation. All right, so you always got to know. But in the New Testament, we are told, we can put on, we're told in do, or to clothe ourselves in our heavenly garments. We are to put on power from on high. So in other words, Paul, who is a master Kabbalist, who understands this and is trying to explain to the Gentiles in a way they can understand, look at, all right, you now have access to the high heavens, to all the heavens, clothe yourselves with the highest Sefiroth, the power, which he said, get that knowledge, which is what I'm trying, wisdom and understanding that you can articulate. So from on high, this is the promise from the Father from in olden days. See, this is what the prophets wanted to look into. They saw that the prophets longed to see our day, this day in which we live, because it was a better deal in the sense that the blood of Yeshua was a perfect sacrifice, and it did more than cover sins, okay, which is really what was going on in that, okay, and there's a whole lot of theology in this, so don't get ahead of me and don't, but the point is that the blood of Yeshua, that blood in heaven that covers us and makes us new creatures, all right? So we have actually a higher level of enthronement. We can attain a very high level of clothing, of garments, but even now, all right? That's sort of what got the older brother upset when he saw the prodigal came, and his father put on him all of these incredibly splendid garments. And he's like, what are you doing? You're giving him like everything, what's up with that? And the father's like, look, don't worry, because Judah has access to these same garments, but in a different way. All right, they still have to be, they're still in a covenantal relationship with Yahweh, where it includes a lot of things that the younger brother was just kind of ushered in. And these are very deep theological things. And this is where we need to get to a level where we can dialogue with Judah on this level and explain, now look at, but I want you to we're just trying to give this idea of concept of garments, all right? There's a lot of deep theological stuff packed into these things. So this is the promise from olden days, from ancient times. This is where, so that we can have an advocate, the Ruach, the Ruach HaKodesh, the Shekinah, the prodigal, so to speak, the returning lost sheep, so that he can have access from the Father, all right, to the Shekinah, all right, through faith, all right, which is really basically where Abraham came back in, by faith. But the flip side of that coin is you still have to obey the rules of the house. All right, there's so much lost on both sides, lost in translation, all right? But we're going to get it all figured out. All right, and he says and this is, the Ruach will teach you, and cause you to remember, because the thing about the lost sheep, we were once, our root systems, our progenitors, our fathers literally were on Mount Sinai. Okay, we did, if you're a lost sheep and you've come back, it's an indication that you do have the genealogical record going back to Mount Sinai in your DNA. Okay, maybe lost in the junk DNA, You were once lost in your own DNA, but now you're found. You did basically hear and sign on to that covenant, all right? And now of your own free will, through all these crazy machinations of history and, you know, what people would call luck and chance, but is really providence, you are brought back into the house, all right? So John 14:26 said that this anointing, all right, and this seed, because there's another word you got to unpack, seed, remains in you. So you do have this Sefiroth blessing on your head now, all right? Just like anyone from the house of Judah. John 15:26 says this, and it's called an advocate, but these are really all the same. They're just, again, many words describing from different, little bit of nuanced differences, the same reality. This ruach, this truth, will testify about Yeshua to you. So, and John 16:13 says this, the spirit of truth, which really, Emrit, this is really, again, this gets back to Tiferet, the Vav, this revelation of the Son. We enter in through believing in the Son, in Vav, in the Yod, Yod, He, Vav, He of the whole Godhead. This truth will again lead you into truth. You have been in John 2, 1 John 2:20, you have this anointing and you know the truth. All right, so, and these are all similar ways of saying the garments, the anointing you can put on, and at the thing when it's all wrapped up, we will all be ultimately clothed again. This is what the resurrection, the standing up, we will be clothed again in our original garments that included the Sefiroth of the tree of life, all right? Because this is the point. If you are of the righteous seed line, because you have that seed, which refers to Vav, which the uncreated light that has life in itself. Remember, Yeshua said, he said, look, I have life in of myself. It doesn't matter. I'm going to lay my life down, but it doesn't work. You know, I can take it up again. I am life. I mean, basically, it's in me. Don't worry about it. I have this power is in me. All right. That's what he did. So on that note, I just wanted to kind of lay that groundwork. And maybe I just go on to teach and you know, to really teach more about what was going on. This has to do with the 6 species, 6 kind of manifestations of, oh, it's so interesting, who the players are and how the prophets code the left side, the fallen side, the demonic side. It's called the world of Sitra Archa, all right, in the text, versus the souls of the righteous, all right, because it's all about the souls, and some are righteous, some are not righteous, all right. So on that note, shalom, blessings. We'll be back for part 4. Shalom.